Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the National Sales Meeting in Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Alex Acedo and I'm the Regional Sales Manager for Stanley Black & Decker, the tool manufacturing company. The topic of discussion today is going to be developing an effective strategic sales plan, but before we get started, I'd like to thank Jim Cannon, the President of Stanley IR North America, for giving us the opportunity to have these type of sales sessions. So let's go ahead and begin the session here. Today my goal is to provide clarification and guidance on how to develop an effective sales strategy by implementing techniques outlined today. We're going to be covering four specific key principles. The first one is understanding the targets, identifying available resources, the sales pyramid, and defining the strategic sales process. So the very first step in developing a strategic plan is understanding the short and long-term goals of the company. It's going to be critical for you to understand what their goals are so that when you're developing your strategic sales process, that you align your goals with their goals, and that way it'll be more effective at that point. Second, the company hierarchy. Those are the leadership. You need to identify the key leadership that will help you drive your initiative or your agenda from your strategic sales plan. So it's very important to understand who are the key players in the organization. Third, knowing their market. Every company plays a certain part in the market. However, when the market that they play in order to understand if they're in an upswing or in a downswing, is going to be important to your sales process as well. Say, for example, if the market is booming, their initiatives and their motivations are going to be driven towards possibly expansion in different markets, using excuse me, lost my train of thought there. But if they're in an upswing, they might be able to also be motivated to increase market share in terms of hiring new people, putting in some capital expenditures in there, and the same thing on the downturn. If it's on a downturn, they're going to be not wanting to spend a lot of money on certain things. So it's very important that you understand that process so that you know how to structure your sales plan for this company. So the second step to this also is, okay, so you say capture all this information, okay? How do you do that? Well, what I would suggest first is to go to the company's website. This will give you some good oversight as to what their go-to-market strategy is going to be, their the go-to-market strategy, also their value proposition that they do for their customers, as well as the products and services that they offer. So it's very important to understand who that company is so that you know how to structure your plan. Now, a lot of companies, their websites are not necessarily the best, so a lot of times you'll have to go to companies like Hoover or Manta, which will provide you additional information that would be very important in your overall plan. And last but not least is companies like LinkedIn, that is basically like a Facebook application. However, they're more structured for the professional. So you can actually go in there and actually start doing a network process with your companies that you're dealing with, so you can find additional contacts. Moving forward to step number 3, which is the sales pyramid. Now this is one of those fundamental type of things that you really have to probably pay a lot of attention. If you have some note paper, feel free to do this. Now keep in mind that when we're talking about the sales pyramid, there's two methodologies here. You've got the traditional way of doing things and the contemporary way of doing things. The first thing is the contemporary is illustrated in blue, and that is basically a top-down approach. Now the top-down approach basically encompasses of you going straight to the senior leadership of the company and basically making your case as to why you want to do business with us. So when you do that and they get the buy-in, what happens is that the corporate executives will drive the initiatives down to the rest of the organization, which is the preferred method. Because if you're doing the opposite, which is the traditional way of doing things, what happens is all these people down here, you'll be selling them the products, the features, and you will only get to a certain level here because they don't have the visibility of what the company's trying to accomplish as an organization, and they also typically don't have the authority to make those type of decisions anyway. So it's always preferred to go from the top down, because that way your alignment of your goals will be the same as the company's goals. So it'll be that much more effective. Now the fourth step, this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is actually the process where you're gathering all this information to make it useful for your strategic sales plan. So let's start first with the value proposition. The value proposition basically is your communication to the outside world as to what value your company brings to the organization that will have a positive impact. Okay? So say for example, if you're just going in there and showing your product, the benefits and the features, you're not going to get very far, because really, say as an example, if I'm selling tools in this case, well, and I go to the executive manager and he says, hey, I have tools. Well, guess what? We need tools, that's great, but I can get tools at Home Depot, I can get them at Lowe's, I can get them just about anywhere, so you really create no value there. Yes, they do have a need, they do need the tools, but from a value proposition, you really haven't accomplished much. So now we're going to be going into the customer strategy. The customer strategy, as we discussed earlier, the vision and the strategy is the short and long-term goals that we talked about earlier. It's very important for you to understand what that is so that you can marry your goals along with theirs. The people, again, kind of like we talked about earlier, the company hierarchy, those are the decision makers. Those are the ones that you need to focus on and identify and start building relationships on, so that you can actually start developing that process and get them as part of your strategic sales plan. And then lastly, the motivation, again, as we talked on the market, is if the market is going up and is booming, they're going to take certain measures based on that trend. So they might, like we said earlier, they might go ahead and invest in capital equipment, hiring new people, different things. And likewise, again, if they're on the downturn as far as the market is concerned, now they're going to start clamming up, they're not going to spend a lot of money, and they're going to start looking to save every possible money. So you're not going to have, your strategy is going to have to change based on the market, because their motivations are changing as well. So that's why it's so important to understand the short and long-term goals of the company so that you can align your goals with theirs. And lastly, that's actually where you go into the sales process. Now, from the value proposition as well as the customer strategy, that's actually where you marry those two components together to develop your sales process. So when you take the value proposition and you take the customer strategy and you align those goals and you put those together, that actually is what gives you the plan to develop your strategic process. So from that standpoint, now obviously once you implement your sales process or your plan, that's actually where you get the home run here. That's actually when you start creating your sales performance. So you're going from a prospect to a customer to actually getting orders now. So this is obviously the final outcome, but keep in mind that this is something that is not random. There is a process involved. This is not something that we're just pulling out of the sky and we'll do it this way today and that way tomorrow. There is a certain process that if you follow it, this is where you're going to end up getting the sales performance that you're looking for. So ladies and gentlemen, this is kind of all I have for you today. I know we've gone through a lot of material very quickly, but there is some other resources that I would suggest you to take a look at. One of those is Dimensions of Professional Selling by Jack Harut and The Magic of Thinking Big. You'll be able to go in there and get a little bit more insight as to what's going on with this. So this actually concludes the first of 10 courses that we have to offer for Stanley Black & Decker. The next class will be Developing a Go-to-Market Strategy. It'll be on July 5th at 8 p.m., room 305 of this building. So thank you again, and thank you very much for your attention.